for coming to this very informal, impromptu gathering. I'm Alan Steinfeld for Newrealities, and I think it's great to start with Stephen Bassett because you know what they used to say about James Brown, the hardest working guy in rock and roll? Stephen Bassett is the hardest working guy in UFO research, in the disclosure movement, and the idea that we have been denied the truth about something very important that is about our place in the universe. And he's really dedicated his life to this cause, and he travels everywhere. He's off to Europe next month, but we're really lucky to have him here. Let's give a big hand to Stephen Bassett.
How can I say this? Something extraordinary is happening. This is, actually, what's the phrase from 2001 Space Odyssey? What does he say? Something is happening. Something amazing, I think it was, near the end of the film. Great quote. I need to get that quote. I'll get that quote. Because most of you are New Yorkers, maybe even Manhattanites, and you have to work 3 jobs, pay the rent, and you've got art shows to go to and everything else, and you play 3 instruments, you probably don't even watch TV much, and you don't read the news that much. So you probably don't know, many of you, what is going on, because it's going on in Washington and in the media, but in a relatively defined area of the media. So unless you're, a news hand like I am, I have to watch the news all day. I mean, I keep it on all the time, certainly all the shows, right? And I'm on all channels, and I do it so you don't have to. And I've been doing it now for about 15 years. And I estimate I've seen approximately 32,000 Viagra commercials. And
Not taking one pill.
I'm wondering, what that does to somebody. I mean, whatever it does is going to happen to me. But I wish they'd stop, because I don't think anybody in the universe that doesn't know what the hell they're selling. So, what is going on? I'm going to show you the story. And because the people that even know something about it. Oh, the drum. You're going to get the drum. It's a very sacred spot. It's a very important spot. You're going to have to play it later, too, by the way. Some people know something about it, and they saw this or they saw that. And it's like, okay, that's kind of interesting, but they don't see it all. And in order to realize that something wonderful is happening, is what he said, then you don't see that. I'm going to show that to you now. And it is my thinking that when I'm done, you will be as nearly convinced as I am that the announcement of the extraterrestrial presence will come later this year. Now, I have colleagues, approximately 85% of my colleagues, who have repeatedly told me year after year that it's not going to happen. Of course, years keep going by and it doesn't happen, so their case gets better and better every year, right? But they haven't changed their mind. And it's either not going to happen, they will let it happen, or it shouldn't happen, or whatever, And I'm very cool with it, because every time someone tells me this, I'm enjoying myself even more, okay? It's even cooler, frankly, all right? Because if everybody thought for sure it was going to happen, what do they need me? I don't need me for, right? So that's what's going to happen here. Now, the situation that we are dealing with right now begins, right, in 1993. And it is, of course, the Rockefeller Initiative, 1993-96. Some of you certainly know about this. Lawrence Rockefeller went to the White House, approached the White House, and it wouldn't matter who had won the presidency. It could have been Clinton, could have been Bush, didn't matter. He didn't care. Bush would have been the better president. And if Bush had been the president, it's very likely we might have gotten disclosure back in 1995 or 4. But Bill Clinton beat him. And so that's who he approached. Now, as it happened, Lawrence Rockefeller was a Democrat. He supported the Democratic National Committee. He was a friend of the Clintons. So that's kind of nice. But the downside is that the military intelligence complex, particularly then, was mostly Republican. And they hated Bill Clinton with a fiery, hot passion. And they wouldn't have given him anything. I mean, they wouldn't have given him a drink of water if he was dying in the desert. And so that was the situation when Rockefeller comes in the door. And when he and what ensues is a 3-year effort to get the Clinton administration to release files, grant amnesty to witnesses, just do something that would advance this issue. But Lawrence knew there was an ET presence. He'd been supporting the research for years, and a lot of people in government knew there was an ET presence. So it's not about knowing; it's about what can be done and who can talk and who can't talk. But he goes in the door, and it goes on for 3 years. And I'm not going to give you a lot of the details, but I will show you this. There were 33 principles. These are the government principles, or I guess you could. These are the principal government people. right? Hillary Clinton, President Clinton, John Gibbons, OSTP, John Podesta, Ronald Pandolfi was involved, and Webster Hubbell. And then the outside principals included Rockefeller, his attorney, Diamond, Commander C.B. Scott Jones, Dick Farley, Marie Bootsy Galbraith, and Sandra Shepard Wright. They were key. And then watching all this and probably be informed was Al Gore, virtually the vice presidential shadow of Bill Clinton, some of the tightest team apparently in the White House. Leon Panetta, who was the chief of staff at the time, so he had to know what was going on. He ran the White House. And Mac McLarty, who took over as chief of staff about halfway through the Rockefeller Initiative, all right? So he knew. And then Bill Richardson, very close friend of the Clintons, very close friend of the Clintons, very tight, very important person in the Democratic Party. He knew. So those are the inside principles. We had some secondaries that aren't that important, right? But they're mentioned in the papers. And then we have the researchers. Don Berliner, Antonio Anais, Richard Hall, he's deceased, Robert Teets, John Mack, now deceased, Leo Sprinkle, Stephen Greer, Bruce Maccabee, Linda Moulton Howe, Jacques Vallée, Colin Andrews, and Carl T. Flock. The total principals were 33. There are still 25 alive. All right? 25 fully witnessed to this 3-year effort. You can speak to it if interviewed, give quotes, and so forth, 25 people. That was the Rockefeller Initiative that happened. Now, not much would have happened after that except this gentleman here. And the reason for that is the press wouldn't cover it. Remember, truth embargo. Covering that would have been a real impingement on the truth embargo, so this wasn't going to happen. And they didn't. There was only one article written by Deborah Orrin of the New York Daily News. That was it. Nobody followed up. It just wasn't covered. Nothing. Now, her doing role-playing with Eleanor Roosevelt, with I think either Dixon or Williamson, that was huge. I mean, that was everywhere. They ran around the Gene Houston, okay. So yeah, that was big, right? But you know, the ET thing in the White House, I mean, who cares about that? No, that's truth embargo. The major papers are in the pocket of the CIA. If you don't know that, you know it now. Now, that doesn't mean the CIA runs everything. It just means that they have certain things that they cannot do, and the CIA, by and large, is the entity that sort of lets them know that. And it's not every paper. You don't have to have every paper. It's the key ones: New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, and so forth. The key papers. As long as they stand down, the other papers will not go there. Too afraid. Okay. And so it happened, and it wound down in 1996, going into the election, because it wasn't going anywhere. Bill Clinton couldn't get anything. They weren't going to give him anything. We don't know how he was stonewalled. We don't know what happened between him and the intelligence community and the military. Hopefully one day we will. But nevertheless, he got nothing. And so it starts to wind down. And that's would have been it. It would have faded off into history, except for this man, Grant Cameron, Canadian researcher out of Winnipeg, working as a school a facilities technician. You know, nice, good job, basic pay, good retirement, and he did this on the side, and he did a hell of a job. And in 2000, he submitted an OSTP request, and somebody screwed up at the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the White House and actually sent him 1,000 pages. Whoever that person is, I'm sure, you know, they're hiding out somewhere. And the reason that they were able to do that is because at the time, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, which is the science advisor office, was not under the Presidential Records Act. They kept it out. Maybe because it was science, you know, it's not really political. So they kept it out. And so had it been under the Presidential Records Act, that stuff would have been sucked into that, and you couldn't have gotten it. You couldn't have gotten it until X number of years after the president left office. But it wasn't. And so he got 1,000 pages back. Now, interestingly enough, the first thing that George W. Bush did, one of the very first things he did when he came into office, was to put the OSTP under the Presidential Records Act. So that couldn't happen again. Because you see, Grant got the documents near the end of 2000. Bush took over a few months later. These documents were already in his hands, and he'd announced them. And they said, holy crap, and they put it under. You know, that's how the game is played. That's what they do. They're very good at what they do. They're very successful. And so we got 1,000 pages of documents. He gave me a set. I made 2 copies, handed one to the Washington Post, one to the USA Today. Never heard back from him. Right? And one of the biggest stories in the country at that point would have been nothing. The truth embargo. No big deal. All right? But then we put them up on the net. I put mine up here. Grant put them up on his site. Right? And there they have been. Here's some news articles. That's some stuff they got from the Presidential Library. We'll get back to that. And there these documents have been for 15 years. This is 173 of the key documents. These are the thumbnails. You thumb right through and you get the document, right? And they've been sitting up there in chronological order for 15 years, just as easy as you can imagine to go get to. And I have given this link out to hundreds and hundreds of journalists and all the members of Congress and talked about it for 10 years and on and on and on, and they didn't cover it. For 22 and a half years, they still wouldn't cover it. The phrase Rockefeller Initiative did not turn up in the press until March of 2015. That's the first time since it ended, well, since it began. And of course, Warren didn't call it Rockefeller Initiative, right? She just said, Lawrence is, in the White House doing something. 23 years, pretty interesting, huh? And so there's been, but the thing about the internet, which I love, and a lot of people have found out sometimes to their great dismay, is that once it goes up on the internet, it never comes down, ever, okay? So for you with the tweets and the Instagram accounts and everything else, I hope you've figured that out by now, because many have not, and they've paid a heavy price. Okay, so there they go. And so they're not going to go away, right? What are they going to do, shut the internet down? And so that's the Rockefeller Initiative. The documents come out in 2001, and that's a pretty interesting year, right? It's the year that George W. Bush takes over, right, in the rather interesting election, right, that the Democrats thought that they would win, and they should have won. There's at least 4 reasons why Al Gore didn't win. He was supposed to win. And had he won, it would have been a different ballgame. Clinton was blocked, right? The issue was continue to grow. A lot was happening. In other words, whatever the government's doing on the outside in the world, the issue of the ET reality just keeps going higher and higher and higher. It's not sitting still. And so Al Gore, unlike Clinton, who was a pot-smoking, womanizing Bubba and draft dodger from Arkansas, Al Gore was a patrician, very bright guy, very well respected from a political family who had served in the Senate Armed Services Committee and was an expert in nuclear arms control and so forth. He would have been a very reasonable president to work with for disclosure. And the thing was in play, but he lost. And George W. Bush became president, which was a problem, because George W. Bush had left the tracks. He'd gone off into the weeds. He had basically received God as his Lord and Savior, which meant that his father and his advisors were no longer in the queue. And so he wasn't going to follow their advice. And there were even articles written about this. And the Pentagon was in a panic because they were absolutely scared to death that George W. Bush was going to do something bad. They were right. Okay, but the point is that the idea that, George W. will be the one to tell the world that there's an ET presence, no way, Jose. All right, and so he takes office January the 20th. All right, so you sort of know the story pretty much up to January the 20th of 2001. Now, the Democrats were they felt, given the fact that they'd lost the election by 1 vote, right, they felt there was a good chance they would win in 2004. In which case they're back in the game, and possibly the ET thing could be back in play for them, right? And so they started to plan ahead, all right? What I'm trying to tell you, and I'm probably not going to make 30, it's going to be more like 45. What I'm trying to tell you is that there has been a backstory going on since 1993 regarding who is going to be the disclosure president. And it's incredibly complicated, and it has a lot of moving parts. But overall, there's one group that staked out that territory, and that is the Clinton team. The Republicans have stood their ground. They stand pat because they are much more wedded to the military intelligence complex, right? And they're not liable to break ranks in that regard. The Democrats are, and Clinton got moved into the historical position by Rockefeller. And so this whole thing has been playing out, and you don't know about it because it hasn't been covered, right? Except when it occasionally pops its head up, right? But the big story never covered. Right? They could have been extensive articles in the major papers about these things and interviews with the people and players, what's going on, etc. No, truth embargo would not allow that. And so given the truth embargo and the Clintons' desire to do it on their terms, it remained completely in the background. And it is probably the greatest political story in history. And it's about to come to its final conclusion. Okay? So we are at January 20, 2001. Heading towards the next election, which the Democrats feel they're going to win, because very early, Bush's poll numbers are in the toilet, okay? Because he raised the taxes and the budget went completely to hell. And so they're licking their chops and they can smell the White House, all right? And so they start to make their move. Now, the key player in all of this, and there's usually a key player in a strategy at this level, is John Podesta. He is the pivot man, the quarterback, the key advisor, the guru, whatever. He is at the middle of it all. And if you keep that in mind, this will fill in nicely for you. All right? And so, now, what happened is the towers came down. I got major intestinal problems from just the stress. Had all kinds of tests that cost a lot of money, and all they found was, you're stressed out, dude. Then I chilled out by running for Congress, right? I got 1,700 votes. Personally thanked every one of them. And that kind of got some press. And we slip on into 2002, and I'm sort of
Well, that was after the World.
Hang on. No, it's after the World Trade Center. Yeah, absolutely. That's why I got the indigestion. That was my reaction to it. I mean, I physically got ill, right? Because I watched them come down too many times. And so I'm campaigning for Congress, right, for the 8th District, because as an activist candidate, I got on the ballot as a signature candidate. And it was the most covered congressional race. That's why I did it, because it's next to Washington. It butts up against Washington, D.C. And it had a very well-known incumbent, Connie Morell, involved, and a Shriver. Mark Shriver was involved, a Kennedy. And so it was getting all this coverage. And so I said, I'll get on the ballot. So I'm doing that. And then I get a call from a Sci-Fi Channel saying, we're putting together a kind of an organization. We want to get your thoughts. And so they pumped me, right, for a month, right? The representative from the Sci-Fi Channel, and I'm feeling really good about that. And so finally what happened is they said, look, we're going to announce an organization called the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and it's being funded by the Sci-Fi Channel. And it's going to be a mainstream Washington-based, frontline looking at this issue, going for the documents, okay? Interesting, I guess. And they're doing it as a give back because they were about to launch the biggest miniseries in history, which was, interestingly enough, Steven Spielberg's Taken, which if you haven't watched, you ought to watch, which is all about the entire UFO phenomenon, but mostly about abduction. It's basically a literary version of it, but still, it's an amazing accomplishment. It cost a fortune. And they're about to launch that. In fact, the premiere in Washington was held at the Reagan Building. I went down there. They had guys walking around with white gloves giving out premium hors d'oeuvres. I mean, I was in heaven. This is a big deal. Well, the Coalition for Freedom of Information was kind of Sci-Fi's channel saying, no, we're going to do something for the people here, help with the issue. And so they announced they're going to have a press conference. But first they announced they're going to have a press conference, and just prior to that, they sort of let me know, we appreciate your thoughts, Steve, but you're not going to be involved in this. I was a little irritated by that, but I'm not now, because I would have been a terrible thing if I'd gotten involved. So they announced the press conference. I go down to the press club. It's October the 22nd, 2002. And I'm excited about this. You've got this miniseries, you've got this organization. It looks like it's going to be mainstream. And I'm sitting there in the front row, and in walks John Podesta. And I'm going, why is he here? What's going on? And he opens with the now infamous remarks, famous remarks, of which we have the 20-second key remarks. The full video is around. It's hard to get. And my jaw hits the ground. It just, boom, hits the ground. And I'll show you this in just a second. But after he makes this announcement, about 5 minutes, then they announce, okay, we are hiring Leslie Kean to be the research director of the Coalition for Freedom of Information, okay? And we will have a publicist, a Washington publicist, one of the biggest publicists. And it's part of a group called the Podesta Group. And the publicist is Podesta Mattoon, which is Anthony Podesta, John Podesta's brother, right? And I'm going, well, that's interesting, right? By the way, John Podesta's brother is richer than God, all right? John Podesta, Tony, richer than God. He has $1 million paintings on his walls. John is the Francis of Assisi of the family. He's just basic. He's not in it for the money. So I'm saying, well, that's impressive. And then, and we're hiring Lobel Novins in Lamont, a K Street law firm, to represent us, right, in our FOIAs. And I'm going, oh, this is first class. This is fantastic. And but that was the reason for the press conference. But that's not what anybody remembers. That organization is gone. What they remember is these remarks. Okay. On November the 1st, 1995, Henry Diamond, the attorney for Lawrence Rockefeller, sent a letter to Jack Gibbons of the Office of Science and Technology as part of the correspondence that had been going on. And the first paragraph is a killer. It says, "Dear Jack, attached are 1, a draft letter to the President which Lawrence has been discussing with Mrs. Clinton and her staff." Bingo. Secretary Clinton, now Secretary Clinton, and a draft report on the best evidence about UFOs, was directly involved in this effort for 3 years. Okay? It's a little more important than channeling Eleanor Roosevelt. All right? Okay. And then we got this one. Okay? This is, that's the draft letter. And this is all about getting Clinton to do what they wanted to do. It's just all part of this process. I'm just trying, this is a very official situation that was going on here. And this was no light, trivial matter. Let me back up and go.
How many pages for the Rockefeller Initiative?
We got 1,000 pages, about 700 are what I would call key. And then there's this other document, all right, just to make the point. Wait a minute, got the wrong one, hang on. Hello, there it is. This is a letter, February the 5th, 1996. This is about 7 months before the thing wrapped up. This letter is from Lawrence Rockefeller himself to John Gibbons, Jack Gibbons. And it has a paragraph at the end which is a killer. And anybody with any common sense, any editor, any reporter, any pundit, any of these talking hair hat, hosts and whatever on these talk shows, these news shows on television that reads this has to understand this is a very significant thing. And the fact that they have read it and doesn't take action tells you a very important thing about the relationship between the United States media at the top end and the military intelligence complex, the one that Eisenhower warned us about. Okay? Let's see how silly this paragraph is. It's what he says. Again, Jack, your willingness to approach the Air Force, the Central Intelligence Agency, and NASA on this project, meaning the Rockefeller Initiative, is extremely important. We will await the results of this effort in order to add my significant findings to our proposed letter to the President. So he's still trying to get, this thing into the President at that point. We will, of course, take into account the comments you made on the draft. It may well be that it will be timely to put this before the President late this year in order that it might receive attention in a second term, okay? You indicated you will keep the First Lady's office informed, and we shall as well. Checkmate. Case closed. The woman that has run for president twice, been a senator and a secretary of state, was involved in this up to her eyebrows for 3 years and has never uttered a single word about it directly, and only spoke at all indirectly on December the 30th of last year to the Conway Daily Sun. That's 23 years of silence, okay? Meaning, it was important, but I didn't even talk about it right away. I thought I'd take maybe 23 years just to digest it, sift through it in my mind, so I could speak confidently about it. Okay, so anyway, so got that. And so again, that is why these documents are the key to the whole thing, really. The key to the door, I guess you could say. Okay, which brings me to this one thing I want to mention. This is the Clinton section of Grant Cameron's website, which is presidentialufo.com. And there is the complete narrative where you can read the full narrative of what was going on. He has that. I don't have that on my page. He has it here. And so I always give this out to the press as well. Which brings us to October 22nd, 2002. Okay? And John Podesta walks in to the press club and does this.
So I believe that the notion of open government, freedom of information, the fundamental tenets of the Freedom of Information Act are really part and parcel of our First Amendment rights. I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. We ought to do it really because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people, quite frankly, can handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law. So there are these cases in which documents haven't been made available to the American public. The American public, as Bonnie noted, is quite skeptical about the fact that the government won't make them available for public inspection. These are records that are more than 25 years old. They ought to be declassified. They ought to be released. And we ought to be able to see for ourselves what's included in those documents.
Those statements are lifted straight out of the disclosure movement. That's what we've been saying through the 90s, into the 2000s. Took them right out there. And one of the key ones, which I never used much, he did, it's the law. Now, let me be clear. The former chief of staff to a president and key advisor to the president, 18 months after that president leaves office, does not go into the press club and talk about releasing UFO files simply because he thinks it's something he wants to do on that day. There is a very powerful reason why he is doing that, because there's significant political risk. What is the reason? The reason is simple. They're looking ahead to winning the White House in 2004, in which case the ball is back in their court. And they need to do something. They need to show a little something here, right? Otherwise, it looks a little fishy. And they need to sort of establish a position. And he just did. And of course, the Coalition for Freedom of Information was going to be essentially at their beck and call. And so they have a little team, right? Leslie Kean is like the researcher. And then he's got his brother as the, it's all there, very tight, very close, so that it can be well controlled. Now, I don't know where it's going to go. They don't know what's going to happen, but that's where we are. Okay, so let me just do this. Okay. So 1 year goes by, and the coalition does some stuff. Not a whole lot, right? I wasn't impressed, but they did some stuff. The biggest thing they did was they tried to get some documents about the Kecksburg case from NASA, and NASA basically said, I don't think so. And so they sued them, right? Maybe NASA didn't go to that press conference, right? They didn't know what was going on, right? And so there was a new era in town, right? So they said, forget it. So they sued them. And NASA was under pressure, and so they called a press conference on October the 23rd to announce that they were suing NASA to get these documents on the Kecksburg case. One case, 1 year, God knows. They probably spent more money in that year on that organization than I had raised for my work in the previous 10, right? But and so I go down, of course. Now, this press conference is, the first press conference, hardly any press there. This one, tons of press, right? It's in the president room at the National Press Club. And I'm sitting down. Who walks in? John Podesta. And he starts off that press conference. And we don't have the video. The video is somehow lost, but I can give you a little bit here. This is an article on Fox News about it. It says, Sci-Fi Channel has cracked open the file cabinet containing the real-life version of the X-Files. They're trying to get the Kecksburg stuff. And the release is part of an ongoing effort by Sci-Fi along with the D.C. lobbying firm and former Clinton Chief of Staff John Podesta. He's not formally in the Coalition of Freedom of Information, but he's kind of wedded to it in the press. All right, John Podesta, to pressure the government agencies into making public top-secret records of various UFO-related incidents that are over 25 years old. By the way, most of you probably already noted this, but I just want to just point out, I'm doing a little Daily Show now. I'm doing a little Jon Stewart. It's okay. Don't worry, I won't get out of hand. If they're top secret about UFOs, then the UFOs that they're top secret about have got to be some pretty fancy UFOs, okay? You don't top secret UFO files, you top secret alien terrestrial craft files, right? I mean, somebody gets a film of a Frisbee flying across the Harvard courtyard, and we don't know what it is. They're gonna classify that top secret? So that alone is all you need to know, right? That, yeah, something here, but we can't talk about it because there's an embargo on. Like you couldn't go to Cuba because there was an embargo. It was there. You could actually sort of go there, but you get arrested, right? And then he goes on, he says, and then it says Podesta, and they're quoting him. This is October 23rd, 2003. I think it's fair to say that we have truly entered the realm of science fiction in Washington, said Podesta, when it's fair game to disclose the identity of a clandestine CIA agent, but not the records of an unexplained crash in Kecksburg that occurred 39 years ago. So basically, he's come back a year later. Now it's October 23, 2003. The campaign for the next White House is going to start in a couple of months, all right? Okay? John Kerry ends up getting the nomination. Hillary, I think, thought about running, but she wisely didn't do it. Just a little too soon, It would be like, should I run for president? Too soon, Hillary, too soon, all right? So John Kerry gets the nomination, all right? But during that year, leading up to the convention, another person turns up. Another Clinton person involved in the Rockefeller Initiative, Bill Richardson. Extremely competent, very well liked, top door politician, right? And he shows up as part of this process, this plan.
From New Mexico.
Well, yeah, exactly. So Bill Richardson, who is the governor of New Mexico at that time, writes a foreword to a book called the Roswell Dig Diaries. And in this foreword, he says the Roswell crash hasn't been explained yet. Well, you know, the Air Force says it has been. The Air Force is absolutely adamant that its third explanation for Roswell is the absolute truth. All right? And the governor of New Mexico said no. Let's see if I get a quote from it, right? And I'll show you something else. He says, he says, 10 years after the U.S. Air Force closed its books on the claim that a UFO crashed in Roswell in 1947, a top Democratic figure wants to reopen the investigation. And he says, clearly it would help everyone if the U.S. government disclosed everything it knows, says Richardson, who served as Energy Secretary under President Bill Clinton and UN Ambassador. All right? American people can handle the truth. Does that phrase sound familiar to you? That's coming from Bill Richardson in the foreword, okay? Now, I'd like to show you something else. Again, I like to have fun with these things. The book went up on Amazon, okay, of course. And Amazon has a read inside, look inside thing. I'm sure you've seen that, okay? And of course, I went there right away and looked at it because I didn't want to buy the book. It was too poor. And I read the foreword, you know? And I'm going, wow, that's really intense. Interestingly enough, after a certain length of time, the foreword disappeared. You could read it, but then after a certain length of time, it was gone from the look inside. It just pulled it out of there. And so now when you go up there, you skip over it. You can't get to that foreword. It's odd. Why would you change the look inside to pull out a small foreword to a book? I don't know. So now it's March of 2004. That was their last move. It goes into the election. John Kerry loses, all right? Because primarily he lost because Roger Ailes put together a masterful campaign to galvanize the Republican Party over the gay marriage issue and turned out a very substantial number of Republicans, and Kerry lost. This was a problem, right, for the whole Clinton situation. Big problem, all right? And so now they quiet down. Nothing is really happening, right, at all. Now, the movement's continuing. We're making progress. We got countries releasing files. We got witnesses coming forward. There's conferences going on. The movement's doing fine. All right? But nothing from the Clinton team. And then the next thing that happens is in 2010. Is it 2010? Yeah. Okay. Actually, let me back up here just a little bit. I'm missing one piece here. Something very important, and I will add this in the polished version. The next thing that happens, of course, is Bush wins the 2004 election. The 2008 election comes up, and Hillary Clinton is running to be president. Now, that's a big thing. She's not saying anything about the ET issue, right? But she's running to be president, okay? And I'm really pushing hard. I'm trying to hit every media I can to get the Rockefeller Initiative into play, because she's running to be president, and clearly this should be an issue. I didn't succeed. The one thing I was able to do, and I in the full version of this I'll include it, is I went to the 60th anniversary Roswell Festival down in July in Roswell, and I'm down there, and just before I left, I put out an article called the ET Ticket, and it got picked up. It got broadly published. Basically, I said that the perfect ticket for the extraterrestrial disclosure issue is Hillary Clinton and Bill Richardson, right? He's a perfect candidate for VP, and he's in on that, and she's in on that, and that's the ET ticket. Nobody else was even remotely close. And nobody picked up on it, but Fox News did give me a call. Fox and Friends, and they said, Mr. Bassett, we got your letter there, and we said, we'd like to have you come on. And so I had to go into the Fox News truck down in Roswell. I'm sitting in this rickety chair, and there's a monitor in front of me, and I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to get myself together, right, so I don't look like an idiot. And the show starts up, and they immediately open up with me and the ET ticket, right? And I'm talking, and then it cuts back to them, the Fox and Friends that are at panel desk, and behind them they've put this huge graphic. And on one side is a face of Hillary Clinton, and on the other side is a flying saucer. And in the middle is the ET ticket. And I'm thinking, when her advisors saw that, they must have coughed up a fur ball for sure. And I knew at that moment that I was never, ever, ever going to be invited to a Clinton garden party. It was just not going to happen. All right? But that's the best I could do. All right, so Hillary runs for president is very important, but she loses to Barack Obama. Okay? Barack Obama, of course, is now heading, he has won the election, and there's a complication because they pissed him off during the campaign. The reason she lost the election is because Bill got a little out of hand, and he started dealing with Barack incorrectly, said some things which didn't sit well to the superdelegates, many of which were black. There was a very high number of black superdelegates, this weird superdelegate thing the Democrats do, and they started defecting to Barack. And once that defection started, the other superdelegates followed. And that's what cost him the campaign. But Barack was not happy, okay? And he was no friend of the Clintons. I mean, he wasn't part of the Clinton team. However, there was a larger strategy going on. What is the strategy? The Democratic Party, preferably Hillary Clinton, is going to be the disclosure president. They got tipped off in '93, got shut down by everybody in town. I mean, there's nobody in Washington that attacked the Clintons, right? Sometimes rightfully so, sometimes wrongfully so. But Barack is president. What are you going to do? You got to bring him in. You got to bring Barack on board. So somebody talk to somebody, okay? Somehow, not hard to do. Till you're in the White House, you can talk up a storm. And so I'm watching this, going, what's going to happen? And it just unfolded exactly as you would expect. Who did he pick to be the chairman of his transition team, the 77 days until he takes inauguration? The number one person in terms of setting up the government, other than him? John Podesta, chairman of his transition team, to help pick the government. Interesting choice. And who did they pick for Secretary of State? Hillary Clinton, of course. Remember her? Rockefeller Initiative. And who did they pick to be Secretary of Defense? Leon Panetta. Remember him? Rockefeller Initiative. And they tried to pick Bill Richardson to be the Secretary of Commerce. And he would have been, but he had a legal problem and he had to withdraw from the nomination. You see, this is not an accident. All right? They're pulling the people in. Obama had been tipped at that point. In other words, he knew what the game was. Wasn't sure where it's going to go, but he was on board because, let's face it, if things went his way, he'd be the disclosure president. And that would be the greatest political legacy any president ever had. Still is, still will be. So, okay, very good. Let's get rolling. But that's not the way it happened. This was an unusual situation because he wasn't just a new president. He was the first black president. And he had, how would you say, resistance. The Republicans, who play hardball and are very good at what they do, basically said, we're going to gut this administration, right? We're going to blow them completely apart. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to launch the fiscal crisis now, before the actual campaign, but the election itself. And so they launched the fiscal crisis in October of 2008 and had the collapse fully underway, had the bailout fully underway before he ever made it to the White House. George Bush orchestrated the beginning of that. All right, that was planned. And so essentially by the time he gets to the White House, there's no money in the Treasury. And we were in a major crisis, the worst since 1929. And people are literally talking about, you know, how are we going to live and so forth. And it turned into the worst recession since 1929. And there was no money, no political capital. And then the Republicans, as you may recall, held a meeting the day after the inauguration where they all agreed, Mitch McConnell led that meeting, that they were going to block in every way he could. They were going to virtually dismantle him. They were not going to allow him to do anything. And so he was dead on arrival. His legacy was sealed the moment he put his hand on the Bible. He was the first black president. He could have retired right then, brought somebody else in. It might have been a different game. But he was president. So could he be the disclosure president under the circumstances? No, he could not. It was not, no way. People are losing their jobs, their pensions, their houses, and he's going to say, oh, by the way, I'm going to tell you about the extraterrestrials. No, 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 no. Okay? And so now he's president. The game's afoot. So what happens? Well, of course, if I go long, forgive me, but I got to do this one run through. Podesta, of course, had formed the Coalition Freedom, the Center for American Progress, which is the number one left progressive think tank, and he founded it, raised $25 million. He was the CEO. He stepped out of that to be the transition chair, and then when the transition was over, he goes back to the Center for American Progress. He's a civilian again. Okay. And we're moving forward in time. So does Podesta kind of sit back and go, okay, that's all we can do, you know. This UFO thing will work its way out one day. Not exactly. What happens is, in 2010, Leslie Kean, remember her, research director for the Coalition for Freedom of Information? She publishes a book called Generals and where is it? Here it is. UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record by Leslie Kean. And he writes the foreword to it. And you can kind of guess what he puts in the foreword, right? Again, when you put stuff in writing, that's even more powerful than when you say it, in front of the camera. Writing is like indelible in some way. So he just put them back into play, right? And we're talking about late in 2010. All right, and so let's see if they give a comment here. Oh yeah, and this is in the foreword. The time to pull the curtain back on the subject is long overdue, Podesta claims, arguing for the academic legitimacy of the book he's endorsing. It's time to find out what the truth really is that's out there. The American people and the people around the world want to know, and they can handle the truth. He's saying the same mantra, the one he starts in 2002. This is 8 years later. And then I want to show you something else that's kind of interesting. Naturally, I couldn't afford the book, so I went online to Amazon to check the inside the book, right? And the whole foreword was there, and I read it, and then sometime later, I don't know, a year or something like that, most of it was taken out, right? It just disappeared. And there's only one paragraph left here, right? And it's an interesting paragraph. You can go find it on Amazon. So once again, they reach it, we got to get that back out. Let's not do that. I love it. Okay, so now we're up to 2010, all right? It's late 2010. We're now moving towards the 2012 election, all right? And Obama can't really do anything. He's almost certainly going to win, and so they now are looking at 6 more years before Hillary can ascend to the White House. So let's see, what was the next things that happened, okay? Oh, I forgot something. I have to pull this back to right here. It's in the wrong place. Okay? This is pretty cool. Forgive me. Right? That's why this is a rehearsal. 2005. Okay? 2005, only about, 4 or 5 months after Bush's takes the White House again. Right? Bill Clinton goes to Hong Kong. Former President Clinton goes to Hong Kong. And he's out in Hong Kong, and interestingly enough, somebody asked him a ET question. That's interesting. I wonder why they did that in 2005. Could have been because of what Podesta was saying. And he gives a response that very few people have seen. You're going to see it now. How many people have seen the Hong Kong remarks? Okay, good. Listen carefully to these remarks, all right? I'm going to have to jump it at one point, but...
I've always wanted to ask this question, and I'm going to use my position to ask it quickly. When I was at your library, that's not that bad, don't worry. When I was at your library opening, I was standing in your replica office, Oval Office. It's an incredibly powerful feeling. I've never been to the White House. I'm not a Republican, but I looked at your desk, and I was wondering, from president to president, whether you pass a list along of secrets that only you and a couple of President Bush Sr., President Bush, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, now like where's Jimmy Hoffa, or what really happened at Roswell. So without giving away any state secrets, is there something we can all look forward to in the future to read about that you know that we don't know that will really make the National Enquirer required reading?
I don't know if you all remember this, but there was actually, when I was president in my second term, there was an anniversary observance of Roswell. You remember that? Mm-hmm. People came to Roswell, New Mexico from all over the world. And there's also a site in Nevada where people were convinced that the government had buried a UFO and perhaps an alien deep underground because we wouldn't allow anybody to go there. And I can say now, because it's now been released into the public domain, I had so many people in my own administration were convinced that Roswell was a fraud, but this place in Nevada was really serious. There was an alien artifact there. So I actually sent somebody there to figure it out. And it was actually just a secret defense installation, alas, and doing boring work.
That's not true, by the way, what he just said. It's a lie.
So I can't think of that. I'll give you a serious thing, though. I spent a lot of, in 2000, I was able to participate with, and a lot of the things that happen, good and bad, will be stranger than anything ever written in science fiction. But I don't know the answers. Which is one reason I would like to live to be 100, just to see what happens.
What I did say was that there really is no list, or there is a list. The secrets.
If there is one, I don't know it. I mean, the Roswell thing, I think, really was an illusion.
He's lying.
I don't think it happened. I mean, I think there are rational explanations that I have succeeded, and I did attempt to find out if there were any secret government documents that reveal things, and if there were, they were concealed from me too. I wouldn't be the first president that underlings have lied to or that career bureaucrats have waited out. But there may be some career person sitting around somewhere hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents. But if so, they successfully eluded me, and I'm almost embarrassed to tell you I did try to find out. But there may be some career person sitting around somewhere hiding these dark secrets even from elected presidents. But if so, they successfully eluded me.
Then we got up to 2010, all right? And then, you know, the advocacy work is moving forward, but the Obama administration is getting deeper and deeper into trouble. No question about that. And of course, the world's going to hell, which we can talk about in the discussion period, okay? It's worse than you think. In any event. And I'm, you know, waiting to do something, and then a miracle happened. On a referral from a supporter, I was put in touch with somebody who gave me $1 million. Now, he didn't give it to me, because I didn't pitch it that way. Looking back, I wonder if I should, but I didn't. I basically pitched it not as a donation, but rather as a partnership film deal with a substantial payout, right? And he found that attractive, and so the money went into a partnership. So I didn't get the $1 million. I got access to some of that money, but not all. But it didn't matter. That made it possible to do this, the citizen hearing on disclosure. All right. This is the, I guess, turning point in the process from the public side. I'm showing you what's happening back on the Clinton side, on that background, what the House moving forward. But then we got our track going forward. But our track, yeah, it's like, you know, we haven't turned the corner yet. This turned the corner. So in other words, if the Clintons are over here doing their thing, and we're over here, right? I can't, you know, I can't get over there. I haven't got the angle, I haven't got the leverage, right? But when that event took place, I turned the corner, and now I'm heading right towards them. All right. So we brought in, most of you know about this, we brought in 42 witnesses to testify for 30 hours before 6 former members of Congress. It was set up as a congressional hearing in the ballroom of the National Press Club. It cost $800,000. It was webcast to the world and filmed in high definition. All right.
It's called the Citizen Hearings for UFO Disclosure.
Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. Okay.
And he was the architect, right?
And it nearly killed me. Trust me, it did. Okay. So you can go to citizenhearing.org and you can acquire the high definition version of this. I can't give it to you because we owe the Canadian $1.5 million, and that's the way that is. Okay. So that generated a lot of media and attention. It also elevated PRG to a position where it could maneuver more strongly, and it set the stage for the final thing that I've been pointing to for 20 years. Okay. The Congressional Political Initiative. But I needed a platform on which to stand. Right? I couldn't just show up in town and go, you know, I'd like to talk to you guys now. I think it's time to get some stuff out, you know, get the files out, you know, and everything. You remember John Podesta one? No, I can't do that. I've got to have something that gives me a position to work from that people simply can't rattle it. And that was the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure.
The conclusion I've come to is incredibly wild. that those in charge have been successful in keeping secret the greatest story of mankind.
The evidence is overwhelming that Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft.
The CIA guy standing next to me says, we're confiscating all this data and you're all sworn to secrecy.
They've all been studying this. They have more data than I do.
So the government has dumped disinformation and misinformation into the field for decades. They've undermined research.
I have lost faith in representative government. I truly think we're in gridlock. It doesn't work, and so we need to make a change.
I think it's ignorant of any people not to seek out what we need to know to continue the universe.
You give this committee a lot of reasons for us to say, open those files.
You're walking up to it and you touch it. What do you do? Touch it that? Do you grab it? Tell us about that.
Okay. I started doing the walk around 360 of the object. And as I came around, I seen there was an inscription on the front. And
this is what you saw, right?
That's what I saw. So I started walking around the craft, and I seen the glyphs. And as I, ran my hand from the fabric of the craft, it was smooth to touch.
You ran your hands along it?
Oh, yeah.
I believe that the time is now to lift the veil of secrecy that has shrouded this subject for over 60 years, and the subject of UFOs should now be openly accepted in the mainstream media.
They exist, they are here to save us against the insanity of our leaders.
I agree with you, they should open those Roswell files.
There is only one way to regain trust: find and tell the truth.
If it's out there, if it's real, we have a right to know.
So we completed that, and the next plan was to, so the point is we were going to ship a full set of the 30 hours to every member of Congress. And then I was going to head to Washington and begin the political congressional hearing initiative, right? It was a two-track plan. One, start approaching certain congressional offices about getting hearings, because they haven't held them since '68, on the ET issue, with the citizen hearing witnesses as the benchmark to start from, right? And we could hold hearings for months on this, but just start new hearings, at least one to start with. And the other was the political initiative targeting Clintons in the presidential campaign. And the two were going to reinforce each other. Because once I got on the Hill and started talking to these offices, the Clintons would know I was there, but they wouldn't know what I was talking about, okay? And the Clintons, again, had the problem in that 3 of the first hours of the citizen hearing on disclosure were devoted to the Rockefeller initiative. And we named names, all the names were named, and the whole thing is laid out 3 hours, right, in front of the 6 members of Congress. And that's what was headed towards the Congress. And we were supposed to launch it on March the 31st of 2014. But things went wrong. And so late that evening, I canceled it. I just sent out a thing. It's no big deal. I sent it, canceled it. But Bill Clinton wouldn't have gotten it. He wouldn't have known that I had canceled it. As far as President Clinton was concerned, those DVDs were on their way to Congress, and the party was about to begin. And so, interestingly enough, he, let me emphasize this, arranged to appear on Jimmy Kimmel April the 2nd, 2 days later. They would be in transit, right? He just happens to show up on Jimmy Kimmel, okay? And he comes on, and when a president goes on these late night talk shows, they don't freelance. It's like, he comes on, sits down, what do you got for me, Jimmy? What are we going to talk about? No, it's all scripted in advance. They know exactly what's going to go on. Otherwise, things would get really, really interesting. I don't want to go there, okay? And so, here is what happened on April the 2nd. Now things are starting to move into third gear. We're second gear, rather. We're approaching first gear pretty soon. This is second gear. And hang on. By the way, this is the main page. You go to paradigmresearchgroup.org and you click on the political coverage link and you get this. And just for your reference, here is a portion of the political articles that have been generated since November of 2014. These are all on the ET subject politically, and most of them mention the Rockefeller Initiative and the Clintons, okay? I estimate that worldwide we've generated 1,000 articles. Not the New York Times, Times of London, the Washington Post, of course, you don't do that, that's embargo, but still, that's huge. This is a game changer, okay? Okay, so here we go. April 2nd, Bill Clinton thinks that the Bassett, that son of a bitch, has launched the Congressional Hearing Initiative. I got to inoculate the team, right? Right? We can't be looking like we didn't even know what's going on, and suddenly this thing breaks on us. We've got to start laying some track here. Now, Podesta had already done that, but now it's time for Bill to step up, right? We saw the thing in Hong Kong, but that was Hong Kong. Not a lot of coverage on that. This is Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, Jimmy's good, all right? Big audience. And when a president's on, very big audience, which means that if you're going to go on a show and you'd like something to happen, they're going to, what do you want, Bill? What would you like? What would you like us to ask? Well, here's what I want you to ask, okay? And then maybe my wife will come on, and maybe the other president will come on, and you get some great, oh, fine. No problem.
But Jimmy Kimmel's interested in the subject also.
It doesn't matter. If he is, great, right?
I think he is.
But the point is they had to do it with somebody, and they picked him, all right?
We're back. Manny Pacquiao's on the way. President Bill Clinton is here with us. So if I was president, and I won't be, let's be honest, the first thing I would do after putting my hand on that Bible and taking that oath to serve the country is I wouldn't even probably finish the oath. I would run to the White House. I demand to see all the classified files on the UFOs. Because I want to know. I'd want to know what has been going on. Did you do that?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah, we had, I think it was at the beginning of my second term, we had the anniversary of Roswell.
You waited that long?
I did.
Wow.
Well, I didn't. And then there's also Area 51. You remember there was a great sci-fi movie where there was an alien kept deep under the ground in Area 51? So first I had people go look at the records on Area 51 to make sure there was no alien down there. And people thought that because everybody who works there has to stop about an hour away and put on special clothing and then drive in and out. And that's because a lot of our stealth technology is made there. We know that now, but there are no aliens there. So then when the Roswell thing came up, I knew we'd get, gazillions of letters. So I had all the Roswell papers reviewed, everything.
If you saw that there were aliens there, would you tell us?
Yeah.
You would?
I would. Well, I think, look, what do we know? We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
Listen to the applause.
I'm trying to tell you I don't know. But
we're not ready for disclosure,
if we were
right?
visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No, I'm trying to tell you I don't know. But if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, right.
That it's a conflict.
Well, now we have friendly
Maybe the only way to unite this incredibly divided world of ours. They're out there. We better think of how all the differences among people on Earth would seem small if we felt threatened by a space invader. That's the whole theory of independence.
You're right. You're right.
Everybody gets together and makes nice and,
You and Bill O'Reilly would be hiding in a bunker together.
Oh, Bill O'Reilly, he'd every mean thing he ever said about me. I don't care. Look at that.
By the way, that's the principal reason that the warmongers have been selling to the people for 10,000 years, right? You have to come together because we have an enemy we have to go fight.
I was the president. And
Okay, now, we've gotten through that. Now let me put that in context. It is April of 2014. His wife is just a few months away from announcing her candidacy for the presidency, all right? And Bill Clinton goes on the show and arranges to be asked about extraterrestrials. He would normally just do that. He would have a problem with that. Of course he would. He would never want to do that, but he had no choice because he knew what was going on, okay? But I didn't send them. They didn't actually go out until about 7, 8 months later. And during that period, they said nothing. They did nothing, all right? And so I arrive on November the 20th. The stuff is arriving in Congress, but Congress is out of session. And so I didn't actually launch until, on the Hill until January the 3rd, and that's when I started putting the request to meet. And so, and also because I was able to raise like $50,000 to go back to Washington and do all this, I brought my publicist in because she only works when I pay her. And she's like, a 35-year veteran. She knows everybody. She's really very good at what she does. But this was the hardest thing she ever did. She told me that. She's on board. She's contacting him. So we're underway, okay? And it's January the 3rd. And right away, we start to get articles, right? Right away, the press is involved because I've been working with the press a long, long time. And so in the November period, the graphic ones are like, very important articles. But in the November period, going way, way down here, and then into early 2015, these articles are popping up, boom, 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 all right? And so things are starting to heat up, all right? And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm raising the temperature on the pot. What is the Podesta and team going to do? What's going to be their next move? Well, I learned later that in that period, like those first 5 weeks of 2015, some of the reporters I was talking to were calling the Clinton team. They were calling up the campaign office with questions, could we ask you about the Rockefeller Initiative, whatever, and they were contacting Podesta, and they were getting stonewalled. Nothing. No response. No comment, nothing. Now, reporters don't like that, and when you do that, that tells them there's something going on, and so they're going to be back at you, but they were stonewalled him, all right? So now he's getting real pressure. Okay, he's thinking back to the nightmare of Monica Lewinsky and Linda Tripp and the blue dress, and the whole thing is going to blow like that, and the press are going to come at us in a raging horde of, and so he makes his move on February the 13th. Again, when you put all this into context, you'll start to understand why what's happening is happening. So here is the move he makes. It is now the tweet heard around the world. It generated hundreds and hundreds of articles worldwide. Now, what's important about this is, and the context of this is staggering, right? And again, this is also part of the picture. So we're now at 2014, early 2014. It's about 5 months is when Bill, early 2000, in a few months, he's going to go on the show. He's going to go on Kimmel. They're following everything I do very closely. In fact, there's a lot of entities following what I do kind of closely. It's kind of fun. I like it, They don't bother me, but because I don't try to hide anything. But they're watching. And so in early 2014, he does something that nobody expected. He hires John Podesta and brings him into the White House as an advisor. He had to step down from his CEO position at the Center for American Progress, which he founded, and he goes to work for the White House, which means what? Executive privilege. He can talk to him all day long about anything he wants, and nobody's going to know, right? It's not going to happen. Can't do that if he's not in the White House. He brings him inside to the White House in early 2014, and 3 months later, he goes on Jimmy Kimmel. All right, and Podesta stays in the White House team all the way through to February the 13th of 2015. A lot of time to talk strategy. Meanwhile, of course, the press is hopping. I've turned up in Washington. The DVD sets have been delivered to the Hill. They have plenty to think about, right? Fine. We're playing chess. I'm moving, they're moving, PRG's moving, they're moving, and so forth. So I'm waiting for the next move, and it comes on February the 13th with the tweet heard round the world. He is on the last day of his job as the White House advisor. He has already announced that he's going to go over to work for Hillary Clinton's campaign as the chairman of the campaign, the president-to-be. And on his last day there, he puts this tweet out on his White House account. Finally, my biggest failure of 2014, once again, not securing the hashtag disclosure of the UFO files. The truth is out there, CC Marine Dad, the New York Times. trust me, in 10,000 lifetimes, you will never see a man in that position put out a UFO tweet unless something really big is going down. It's simply not going to happen. And any pundit or any reporter that thinks, oh yeah, he's just having fun, is an idiot and needs to get another job. Unfortunately, most of them are idiots, and they do need to get another job. And so he's put this tweet out. It's got all kinds of stuff. My biggest failure, he's saying the biggest failure in his 13 months with the president is not getting UFO, which means he tried. Doesn't say what happened, doesn't say how he got blocked. But then he does something very interesting. He doesn't say disclosure of the UFO files. He says hashtag disclosure of UFO files. Now, why is that interesting? Well, because I'm an internet dude, and I have a Facebook group called the Disclosure Lobby. It has 13,000 members. You can find it on Facebook. If you belong, feel free to join it. Well, the Facebook lobby is sort of my Twitter team. And so when I arrived on November the 4th, we launched, in addition to obviously the shipment of the DVDs, a Twitter storm on the U.S. Congress and the media, right? We had the Twitter handles for about 80% of the Congress, and we had about 400 Twitters. I don't know how many people were involved, but I know this. By the end of January, they had sent 2 million tweets. Meaning some of these guys are getting 50, 60, 80, 100, right? And under the protocol of the Twitter storm, they all, when possible, had to have in them hashtag disclosure. And then he uses that hashtag on that tweet, right? A little message, perhaps. All right, now, let's back up. More articles keep coming out. The Mother Jones magazine jumps in. The Roll Call newspaper jumps in. I'm getting a lot of coverage now. And things are continuing to heat up all through. And then in early March, because of this tweet and the Mother Jones magazine article, the Congress started coming back to me. I had been putting in all these requests to meet. They started calling me up. And I started setting up meetings in early March. All right? And I've met with 30 offices, I guess, Senate and House side, right, talking about these issues, right, about hearings and so forth. I don't expect to get hearings. Congress is a giant block of cement, right? But the fact that I'm wandering around the Hill, you know, with the Rockefeller initiative stuff and talking to people, staff, is something of grave concern to the Clinton team, right? And so, interestingly enough, just about 7 or 8 days after I start getting those phone calls, the President of the United States goes on Jimmy Kimmel. How interesting. Let's see what happens when he goes on Jimmy Kimmel.
If I was the president, and it's unlikely that that is ever going to happen.
Does that sound familiar?
If I was the president...
It was unlikely that I was going to be president.
Obama's really good.
The moment I was inaugurated, my hand would just, it'd still be hot from touching the Bible, and I would immediately race to wherever they have the files about Area 51 and UFOs, and I go through everything to find out what happened. Right. Did you do that?
That's why you will not be president.
Obama is really good.
That's the first thing that you would do. The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets. They exercise strict control over us.
Now, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you...
So you have questions for the president? Yeah. This is a big moment. You can, whatever you want to ask. What's your first question?
So, is there really a book of secrets?
That's a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of secrets would you want to know? What would be in the book of secrets?
If aliens are real.
Ah.
Well, what do you think?
Well, after watching this TV show, I think aliens are probably real.
Golly. Okay. Well.
Which TV show was that?
I think it's called, like, America's Book of Secrets.
There you go. There you go.
Well, seems like somebody spilled the secrets already.
I thought that was classified.
It's a book of secrets, and yet there's a TV show.
Yeah, well, the truth is, Macy, we haven't actually made direct contact with aliens yet. But when we do, I'll let you know.
All
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they've made us, that's a significant move. Obama has reestablished his position. He's come out, he said some interesting things there that are kind of relevant, scripted, and put it in play. That was on February the 11th, all right? More debates are taking place, no questions are being asked. That's also the town halls, no questions are being asked. It's simply not being touched by any of the networks. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, none of them, they won't ask, okay? And I'm thinking, and plus Time Magazine and the New York Times, the big shots, they did sort of put out very brief statements that, they were pretty sure Hillary was joking, in Conway. Okay, so how do you deal with that? Well, here's what you do. If you're John Podesta, you go get an interview to KLAS TV in Las Vegas during the campaign prior to the Nevada caucuses. Remember, we're in the middle of a presidential campaign. He shows up and he gives this interview.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate. During a recent campaign stop in Las Vegas, the campaign manager for Hillary Clinton told Politics Now host Steve Sebelius that his candidate will try to get to the bottom of the UFO question. George Knapp has that story.
I think the American people can handle the truth about this.
John Podesta has always been a strong advocate for declassification of government files in general and UFO files in particular. As White House Chief of Staff for Bill Clinton, Podesta helped declassify hundreds of millions of documents, but if there were UFO secrets being held somewhere, they eluded even the president. Podesta returned to the White House as an advisor to President Obama, and on the day he left that job, he sent out a tweet saying his biggest disappointment was the failure to uncover the UFO files. These days, Podesta has the ear of another potential president. He's running the campaign for Hillary Clinton and made it clear to political reporter Steve Sebelius that the UFO question has been discussed.
I've talked to Hillary about that. This is a little bit of a cause of mine, which is that people really want to know what the government knows, and there are still classified files that could be declassified.
It wasn't an offhand remark. Podesta has encouraged journalists to ask his candidate about UFOs, and a few have done so. Mrs. Clinton told a New Hampshire newspaper she intends to get to the bottom of the UFO mystery, thinks it's possible the planet may have been visited, and would consider creating a task force to investigate Nevada's Area 51 military base, which became a center of UFO attention more than 25 years ago because of reports that aired on KLAS TV. CNN characterized Mrs. Clinton's remarks as jokes, but Podesta makes it clear he and his candidate are serious.
I think I've convinced her that we need an effort to kind of go look at that and declassify as much as we can so that people have their legitimate questions answered, and more attention and more discussion about unexplained aerial phenomena can happen without people who are in public life, who are serious about this, being ridiculed.
The Clintons know firsthand how the UFO topic invites ridicule. Anyone remember the frequent tabloid headlines during the Clinton presidency? Hillary adopts alien baby, space alien endorses bill. And more recently, conspiracy theorists have suggested there are UFO secrets hidden in Mrs. Clinton's private emails. It comes with the territory.
I come in for, I guess, my fair share of people raising questions about whether I'm off my rocker, but I've been long time advocate of declassification of records. See what's going on here in Nevada.
Yeah. George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Now, Mrs. Clinton's rival for the Democratic nomination, Senator Bernie Sanders, was also asked about UFOs, but said he is far more interested in issues that are more pressing for most Americans.
This station is watched from all over the world. This is a very well-known station, KLAS TV. George Knapp is a top investigative reporter, 10-time Emmy winner, okay? He's heavy, heavy duty. He just recapped the whole thing. But what's happened here is that Podesta has stripped completely out from under the mainstream press the idea that Hillary was joking in Conway. She's serious. Now it's fully in play and it's serious. She then went on to another debate and they didn't ask her about it, all right? Okay. Now, let me go out. Because this is where all this is going and why I'm here is to tell you that disclosure is about to happen. It's no bigger than that. And I want you to get this clear. No, March the 1st, right? March the 1st, she does another debate. They still don't ask her. all right? And so what happens next? It's time for Hillary to go on Jimmy Kimmel, okay? Let's see how that goes, all right? Secretary Clinton goes on Jimmy Kimmel.
President Clinton.
When we had your husband, President Clinton, on the show, he said, I asked him about UFOs in Area 51 and if he looked in, because if I was president, that's the first thing I do. I go right into those files and see what was going on.
Right.
And he said that he did do that.
Yes.
And that he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And you know, there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon, really?
Yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
Notice that when Podesta gave his interview to KLA's TV, he used unidentified aerial phenomena. That is the proper term, though the actual term is extraterrestrial craft. That's coming probably from Leslie Klein, but they're also paying attention to the movement, right? So he used it. Then she goes out of her way to use that. Why? She's trying to distance herself and the issue from the stigma of UFO, which is the key carrier of the ridicule virus.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible. If there's nothing there, let's tell people there's nothing there.
What if there is something there?
Well, if there is something there, unless it's a threat to national security, I think we ought to share it with the public.
Well, what if everybody's all hopped up on medical marijuana and everybody gets paranoid? I would love it.
That's why I want more research.
So now she's turned up. That's March the 24th. They have another debate. I think it was a town hall. No questions are asked. Okay, and so now we're headed toward the last debate. There may not be another one, right? The last debate is going to be on CNN. They still haven't asked the question. And so the thing is, Podesta will he test the water further, or is he going to say, okay, they're going to stand down? He can't, because, as I told you before, I'm now working with 14 reporters from 14 different papers. They've written a combination of 36 articles, just those, and they've all been green-lighted by their editors to write more. He knows it's never going to end. The reporters are coming to them. And so he makes the final shot. What does he do? 7 days, it was approximately 6 days before the final debate on CNN, he gives an interview to CNN, all right? And what comes up in that interview? Let's find out. What do you think? What do you think is going to come up in the interview, right? CNN is going to hold the debate, and he goes and talks to CNN.
When it comes to Area 51 and whether or not the U.S. government knows of aliens, should Secretary Clinton be elected president?
Well, what I've talked to the Secretary about, and what she said now in public, is that if she's elected president and she gets into office, she'll ask for as many records as the United States federal government has to be declassified. And I think that's a commitment that she intends to keep and that I intend to hold her to.
Have you seen any of these documents? You were White House Chief of Staff years ago. Have you seen...
President Clinton asked for some information about some of these things, and in particular, some information about what was going on at Area 51.
Notice something here. He says President Clinton asked for some things. What he doesn't do is close off that statement. He never says whether he got them or not. Theoretically, he got them. He has to get them, all right? Now, maybe this is a mistake, but I think it's not a huge mistake, but he realized, okay, I may have said that, but I can't, so he has to divert, and he channels into another direction.
But I think that the U.S. government could do a much better job in answering the legitimate questions that people have about what's going on with unidentified aerial phenomena, and they should, the American people can handle the truth, so they should just do a thorough search.
What is the truth?
And open it up.
Is there evidence of alien life?
That's for the public to judge once they've seen all the evidence that the U.S. government has.
What do you think personally?
What do I think? I think there's a lot of planets out there.
Okay, now there's something you need to know that's very important here. Other planets out there. There's something you need to know that's very important. Okay. Remember, he was an advisor to Obama for 12 months. Okay. He was an advisor to Clinton. He was an advisor to Hillary. All right. Okay. One of the things that helped get us here, and I left it out of this rehearsal, is in 2011, I submitted a petition to the White House website called We the People. It was the second petition submitted 5,000 signatures were needed to require a response from the White House. We got those. We got 12,000 signatures, right? Then they raised it to 25,000. But in any event, the point is that we got a response. It came on October the 4th. And in that response, the White House, which is run by President Obama, and I'm not going to show it to you. I would have put it up normally. But he basically, the key paragraph is there is absolutely no evidence at all for an extraterrestrial presence. And no evidence that the government has been hiding anything. He has basically just said that's not the case. He is completely, but that is now the official written position of the White House since October the 4th of 2011, and it's cost him a lot of grief because I dined out on that for a long time. Nobody believed that. It's all a total lie, right? And it's still on the White House website to this day. The original petition and the response.
So give us the punchline.
Okay, about to happen.
Pull it all.
Okay. Now, so that's CNN. But just to make sure that CNN might just ask this question so they could get this damn ball rolling, the day before the New York primary, she goes on one of your big-time radio stations, Power 105.
If you become president, are you really going to tell the truth about UFOs? Because I'm a big extraterrestrial.
Are you a big guy?
Huge. I saw a flying saucer when I was in third grade.
He actually got
in South Carolina.
In South Carolina.
He got abducted by aliens.
And he has some marks on his shins from them.
I think I've been abducted a few times. But are you going to tell the truth about aliens?
I have said I want to open the files as much as we can. I mean, if there's some huge national security thing and I can't get agreement to open them, I won't. But I do want to open them because I'm interested.
Do you believe?
I don't know. I want to see what the information shows,
Yeah.
right? But there are enough stories out there that I don't think everybody is just sitting, in their kitchen making them up. I think that people see things. What they see, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we've got to try to, give people information. I believe in that.
This is notable because the presidential candidate just bumped up against what? The contactee issue. All right? So, here's where we are. I'm meeting with a top editor of one of the New York papers tomorrow. I'm leaving for London on May the 1st. I'm going to be meeting with editors of these papers, the Mirror and the Daily and so forth, in London, right? Bigger articles are coming, heavier articles, deeper. Any one of these papers could launch a multi-reporter attack on this and start calling up these principles, of which I have provided them all the contact information, right? We have tweeted the key information to all 600 of all of the media contacts in Washington, D.C., all right? This thing is just about ready to blow. That is how close we are. And as we get close to disclosure, expect strange things to happen. I am done.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.